Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio, where truth equals reality, and truth is often stranger than fiction.
Hello everyone, welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man, and tonight I was going to talk to Zen Garcia about his newest book, Sons of God. However, I appear to be having trouble getting through to Zen. He's on a Skype phone and so am I, but it still should work. I'm getting a recording, and in one breath the recording says that I'm not getting through to him, and I have to be a law enforcement official. Another breath it says the line's busy. I'm not sure which is which, so I'm emailing Zen now. If y'all will please bear with me to try to see what I can do. In fact, folks, I tell you what, while I'm sending him an email, I'm going to send him my Skype number and suggest that he calls me. And I do apologize for this. These things, I guess, are bound to happen when you're using modern day technology. Okay, I shot him a message off. Also, I want to let everybody know that since I put up this new website, I've had some difficulty for users that are using Internet Explorer. It's not a major issue. It's when you first come to the page, you can't always see the buttons on the deal, or sometimes you can't even see the player at all. If this happens to you on an Internet Explorer, and it may not be all of them, it might just be a Windows 7, for example. Might be a different Windows version, but if you do get it, up at the top of the browser, right next to the address bar, at the end of it there, where that little search magnifying glass is, but right before the refresh button, there's another button very similar to a refresh. It's a compatibility view button. If you'll click that, it'll reload the page in compatibility mode, and the player will show up. I also want to let everybody know that I've been looking for some time, and I finally today have found the Lloyd Pye tape talking about gene fusion and how it proves that human DNA was manipulated by the Anunnaki or extraterrestrials way back in the beginning at some point in time. And I also got the one of a scientist using the same scientific discovery to explain evolution, and I'm going to be posting that far and wide everywhere I'm a member tomorrow for everybody to be able to listen to both and make up their own mind as to which person makes the most sense, Ken Miller or Lloyd Pye. Quite frankly, I think Lloyd Pye does, and you might see why after you hear both sides. But I'm going to leave that up to everybody else's judgment. I just thought I'd let y'all know about that as a kind of a time killer while I was waiting for Lloyd to call in. Not Lloyd. Now I got Lloyd on the brain. Zen to call in. Let me check my email and see if he's shot me one back. Not yet. Well, this could be a wee bit of a sticky wicket. Let's be patient and let's give him a few more minutes and we'll see what happens. In the meantime, I don't have everything all booked up for December yet, but I do have some, and I have some for January. had Libby Outlaw scheduled to be on, but she's never confirmed, so I don't know where that's going for the December 1st. Claire Papin is confirmed for December the 4th at 8 p.m., and she has a story to tell about how hard she's been working with the Virgin Mary and trying to help bring peace to earth. That's really kind of a simplified version. I don't have the material right in front of me. I do apologize for that. Then Saturday, December 8th at 1 p.m., Bob Turin will be returning to my show once again. And this time he's got two books to discuss. One of them, The Haunted Mind of H.P. Lovecraft, and the other one, American Vampires, which I think y'all are going to find very interesting. I will not be airing Tuesday, December 11th, as that's my wife's birthday. Tommy Hawksblood will be returning on December 15th. And Michael Edwards will be coming on to talk about his Ghost Box, December 18th. And I'm still working to fill some December slots. January the 8th, I'll have Marie Jones. We'll be discussing her newest book. This book is from the future. And also, I meant to tell you guys that I think it was last Tuesday I was scheduled to have Nick Redfern on, and I canceled the show because of my back, and I'll be contacting him tomorrow to reschedule. And when I get that new date, I'll post it everywhere. Oh, wait a minute. You know what? I have two dates for Michael Edwards. If I don't get him on December the 18th, it'll be on January 22nd. I think it's 22nd, and he said he couldn't make the 18th, but I forgot to mark it off. Okay. Well, I haven't heard from Leslie yet. I mean, not Leslie. Now I'm getting him on the brain. Let me see if I can get an email from Zen. I see something in the box. It's from Zen. Okay, he's given me another number to try. Bear with me.
Hello, Royce.
Hello, Zen. Yes, this is Royce. I thought I'd let you know that we're already live. When I had trouble getting through to you, I went ahead and started the show. And
I apologize. I don't know why that number didn't work.
Well, it's a Skype number. Who knows? Maybe they're having trouble tonight.
Yeah,
but it's, I wouldn't worry about it too much. You know how technology is. I just want to let you know that we're already live and that we can go ahead and get started. I've already did the intro and explained to everybody what was going on.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it, Royce, and apologize to the listening audience.
Okay. Well, Zen, this is about what now? Your third time to come on my show?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Well, it's always a pleasure to have you.
It's always a blessing. And it's always good to come on with you, too, Royce, because I just like you as a person, so, it's always nice to share discourse.
It's always nice to get to share in your work that you're doing, especially since you and me have studied so much of the same material. It's nice to see where we have drawn similar conclusions and where we've drifted away from each other at places. And, two people can, study the same material and come up with different conclusions, in other words.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, my work varies from most people's, and not a lot of people, do agree with me. A lot of people have been led to the same discernment, but I do have a unique perspective, and, and you're right. For however many people do read it, we could all, come up with different opinions, but as long as we can respect each other, and just
that's the important thing right there.
Yeah.
That to keep an open mind And if there's something you don't agree with, don't shoot the person down. Check into it yourself.
Right, absolutely.
But
yeah, in fact, I always encourage people to not believe anything that I say or anything that I bring forth, because they have to do their own research, and truth is a personal thing. So.
Right, and I agree with you. Now, what I was going to mention also is, like I told you earlier in the email, I regret to, say I was unable to read the entire book due to the fact that I had other technical issues on my end that I explained to you. They occurred right during the middle of the holidays, which is not a good time because you're already busy. But at any rate, I did read enough of it that I was able to see where you were going with it. And I got to tell you, you cover some material in there, and you tell people you do this, that is very little known. It's not the kind of thing that you can walk into any church and sit in any pew in here or in any Sunday school class in here. But the material is out there, and it is documented if somebody is just willing to look beyond the confines of the Orthodox canon into the other scriptures that were left out of the canon. And sometimes even in the canon itself to some degree.
Yeah, I use the Old and the New Testament as the foundation for the premise and my conclusions and my theories and everything that I speak on. But you're right, I do go outside of the box, and I utilize all of the other texts and, in fact, incorporate all of the other texts into a underlying truth, so to speak, and force all of the text together in like a jigsaw puzzle, like truth. And so I help people to see all the connections and to see the similarities and also where the differences lie.
Right. And you also, what it appeared to me like you did, which you made a chronicles of somewhat man's, but really more the ancient fallen angels, which are gods, the sons of gods mentioned in the Bible, the fallen angels in the Bible in the Old Testament. You tracked their progress, I think, more than you did our progress, it seemed to me like, but you tracked both, in other words. And
yeah, I do that as well. In fact, the book that I'm working on now, Pre-Existence in the Prior Times, it will do more of that, because you're right, there's that whole history, that prehistory, the fallen angels, the hybrid demigods, their interdiction into the affairs of humanity, and even into the affairs of pre-Adamic humanity. And it's important to understand how deep that interdiction went and how far it goes back in order to understand our place within it and why it was that even we came into being and why it is that we find ourselves in the flesh now. And all of these things tie together to bring us to where we are now.
Now, you mentioned things in there that a lot of people never heard of, like the Cave of Treasures, and I actually read about this Cave of Treasures myself. God, this was years ago, and I want to say it was the extra-biblical book of one of the, it never made it into the Apocrypha or the Pseudegraphical, either one. However, it was one of the books of Adam, wasn't it? It described what it was like for Adam and Eve once they lost their light and their glory, and how the hardship was on them, and compared to what it might be to say you and me.
Right. It's very similar to the first book and second book of Adam and Eve, part of the forbidden books of the Bible, the forgotten books of Eden, that whole collection. But it's one of the Ethiopic books. It's part of their canon. It's one of their very favored holy books, right along with the Glory of Kings, the Keber Nagast, which is another one of the pseudepigraphal books that the Ethiopians celebrate and honor, and the Cave of Treasures is one of those as well. And they're both very interesting reading and do add great detail into the early life of Adam and Eve.
Well, me personally, I would highly recommend anybody to read all these books. You can find them online for free for yourself, just a little bit of Googling. There are websites. There was one I used to go to that I swear had almost every old scripture out there that was known to be on the internet at the time. I want to say it was called Earth History, if memory serves. I might be wrong about the name of the site, but the point being, you can find all of these, the Book of Jashur, the Books of Enoch, all of them on the internet for free. And if you are open-minded enough to, forego the infallibility of the Bible you've been taught up to now and leave it open for interpretation and for God to talk to you in prayer and go read this other material, you'll begin to see that there's a spirituality in some of these old books that it's missing from the Bible that also fills in missing gaps.
Well, there's two critical things that have been stripped away, that have been taken out and eradicated from what has come to be known as truth to the masses. One of those major themes I cover in my fourth book, Lucifer, Father of Cain. And that has everything to do with, Cain not being a child of Adam, there being this whole other hybrid bloodline and seed line, and that this bloodline is dedicated to...
Right, the serpent seed line.
Yeah, and it serves through the Freemasons, all the secret societies, all that. The other major theme of importance to understand is that the blood royal elite, this Canaanite bloodline, that their connections go back to the sons of God that mated with the daughters of man. And that they hold their lineage and their blood ties to the Nephilim and to the interdiction, to that mating that took place so long ago. And so it's important for us as humanity, as the sons of Seth, to understand who the other bloodline is and who it is that we are actually warring against, because the enmity between the seed lines is ongoing and is continuous until the harvest, until the separation of the wheat and the tares, which is soon. But unless you understand about the two different bloodlines, two different seed lines, who the Pharisees are, who the tares are, then you're not going to understand what Christ is speaking about in the New Testament, nor why it was in the Old Testament that the line of Seth is told continuously to never intermarry with the Canaanites.
Right. And I understand where you're coming from with that. I understand it. These are called the serpent seed line and the messianic bloodline.
Mm-hmm, right.
And that would lead me to another question because, as I said, like you, I've done a lot of studying in this, so I get to hear more than one side of the coin. I'm quite sure you do too.
Yes.
And I say, why not lay it on the table just to see what you would say about it?
Absolutely.
What I have also read by some people, for example, and I hesitate to bring this guy up because he's no longer with us to defend himself, but he's an easy one to remember. Was one of the ones that wrote a lot of material on this was Sir Lawrence Gardner, and he wrote about that it was not the line of the serpent that was actually the evil line. It was the other line that's claiming to be the serpent seed. And I was wondering, what would you say to people that say that you're mixed up about the bloodlines?
I would say that he is right, that the other line did get infiltrated, and that both lines were actually corrupted. That's actually why the Lord had to save Noah and his family and to repopulate the planet with Noah and his children, is because the bloodlines did get so corrupted. And even the sons of Seth, they fell away to such a degree that the Lord had to restart things in a supernatural way. And that's why the flood of Noah and his day was also brought upon the people.
Yeah, now, I remember when I read Genesis, one of the things that actually there was more than one thing that stuck out to me. There was quite a bit. I don't know about you, but personally when I read things, it's like when I listen to people. If something is said or written that somehow doesn't make sense or in the least little bit looks suspicious, it sticks out like it's on a big neon sign, in other words. And then you begin to question it. Why is it like this?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that stuck out like that was the lineage on Cain's side.
Right.
I want to bring this up now because it supports what you're saying about mixed up bloodlines. If you read the bloodline on Cain's side versus on Adam's side, you will see that names are very extremely similar.
Right.
Which would indicate it would be maybe because not only were they mixing up bloodlines, but they were trying to mix up the names on purpose, perhaps for, the writing of history for future reference, for all we know.
They knew what they were doing. They were doing that to cause, for Babel's sake, for confusion's sake. And also Satan knew as well. And that's why the names were mixed like that. That's why even Cain's firstborn son was named Enoch, So, yeah, those things were done for confusion. And Satan knew, because even he tried to prevent even Christ from being born, because he knew that redemption would come through the Son of God, and the Son of God would come into the flesh.
And if you couldn't stop him from being born, if you could raise doubt as to who he would be, then you could stop people from believing in him.
Right, exactly. And he did everything he could since the very beginning to cause confusion and to hide away the truth.
And another thing that stood out in the Bible to me when I was reading Genesis was the part you were just talking about Noah in particular, because a lot of people that read this verse, they don't pay attention to exactly how the verse is worded. And, if you listen to the wording of the verse, you'll begin to see about a mention of the word pure that is in there for a reason. And it's referring, and I'm not the only one who has thought this, I've read of others that agreed that this is because Noah's bloodline was the only pure bloodline left.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm trying to see where, I'm looking for the part, I'm not good at remembering exactly where stuff is at, but where it says, and Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord.
Mm-hmm. It says he found favor in the eyes of the Lord because he was still pure in his lineage, pure in his DNA. And it makes mention of that specifically because he was not yet corrupted by the hybrid bloodlines.
Here it is. I found it. No, I'm reading the King James Version, so I was wrong. It used the word perfect, but it's the way it worded perfect, at least in King James. But it says here, these are the generations of Noah. Anybody that wants to look it up, it's Genesis 6:9. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations. Pardon me. I apologize for that. It's the season. And Noah walked with God. Now, to me, when I read the words perfect in his generation, what would that refer to other than the seed or the bloodline?
Right. It is. Absolutely.
Now, a lot of people will read that and they just think that he was without sin, or he was like Enoch, in other words. But they didn't say that about perfect in the generations of Enoch.
Right. Right. Exactly. And here's another thing that also gives confirmation. If you look at the holy lineage of Christ, as mentioned by Matthew and Luke, he's also excluded from Christ's lineage. And if you study the two different seed lines mentioned in Genesis 4 and Genesis 5, you'll see that there are, two different seed lines mentioned, and that is the wheat and the tares that are mentioned in Matthew chapter 13.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things for me on this one, then, is not too long ago I got a book, and I read it already. Warwick Publishing, they send me books to, read and, bone up on before a show. And this one was called The Master Game Plan if I remember correctly, by Robert Bauval. And I think it was him and Graham Hancock. I don't have it in front of me, so if I misquote, I'll ask everybody to forgive me. But I know it was Robert Bauval at least. And it talks about two different spiritual seed lines. These aren't physical, though, that have existed since the beginning of time, that have, been influencing society and cultures around the globe ever since the very beginning. And one was more of an esoteric spiritual, and the other was more of an exoterical material, which you would think the line of Cain would probably be the one you'd associate with the material people, whereas the line of Seth would be the spiritual people. But it all ties in together with what you're talking about, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. That's exactly what I speak about in my work, in my book. And in fact, the line of Cain is the lineage that was utilized by the fallen angels to introduce the secrets of heaven. They were the ones that were taught to be the metallurgists, the ones to forge weapons, to build cities even. And yeah, so they were the ones that were given the secrets of heaven and taught, even the women were taught to, do the makeup and to do astrology, herbs and roots. All those things are spoken about in the books of Enoch.
I'm glad you mentioned this, because it's just another example of what I was mentioning earlier about things that you don't hear about in Sunday school. And in this case, you don't even read about in the Bible, at least not in the kind of detail that you could read about in, say, for example, the book of Enoch, which actually he's got, I think it's either 2 or 3 books. It's been so long I'm having trouble remembering which. But one of them goes into great detail about how these women were taught about how to make cosmetics, and men were taught how to make weapons of war, and the herbs for healing, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, it's both of the books of Enoch, actually. The first and the second one, they both make mention as to the extent of the secrets and the wisdom and the knowledge that they were given. So I would recommend that people read both of those, and in fact to read all of the other books as well.
Yeah. Now you've got 3 books out, don't you?
6. This is my 6th book.
You're 6. Wow, yeah. You're kind of a prolific writer, ain't you?
I am.
Well, listen, Zen, we got off on the wrong foot, with the technical issues at first, and I forgot to mention to the listeners out there that might be listening at, like iTunes or somewhere else, that your website is www.fallenangels.tv, and it's a really big, nice, friendly social network, and I assure you, Zen would be good to have you come over, join, share what you know, and maybe even get in a debate with him. I can't speak for him on that, but he strikes me as a fellow that's open to it.
Oh yeah, we're totally open to debate, and in fact, we like to share dialogue with fellow truth seekers, and you don't have to agree with anything that I say or anything that I'll bring forward, because I expect people to challenge the things that we bring forth. And I don't expect you to accept them as truth. Do your own homework. Confirm these things for yourself, And if they're truth for you, then, let's talk about that. And if they're not, then we can talk about that as well. Because what I find, Royce, is that we're like on different stages of evolution and different steps and levels of truth. And that what might not be truth for somebody today, later, as they continue in their seeking, they
becomes true.
Yeah, they'll reach.
As God reveals it to them Himself, in other words.
Right, to where it resonates for them, and then they'll be on that level to where they can understand those things, So yeah, we have to respect each other for where we are for the time that you're there.
Which I would agree with you on that one, 100%. I also want to mention to everybody, if you got any questions, to please call in at 832-632-7904. I don't always manage to get the phone before a voicemail picks up. I usually try to wait for a break in the conversation. So if I miss you, just call right back and I'll keep trying to hit you. It probably won't be too long before I can get a chance to, get you online and you can ask Zen some questions yourself. Now, one of the things, Zen, that you covered in your book was the 3 ages of men, which is a 3 world ages, I believe you called them, and I still may be messing it up. But what I'm saying is, a lot of the doctrine that I was reading about in there I'm familiar with, and I know where you're getting it, and it's sound doctrine. But most of the people here, even myself, was not familiar with the term 3 world ages. So you may want to kind of give everybody here a briefing about that.
Sure. It's a very deep concept, and it takes a lot of to wrap your mind around it. But I'll go ahead and lay it out in the simplest way that I can. Basically, the 3 world ages have to do also with the 3 creations of Adam and understanding who Yahushua, Savior, Messiah was as the only begotten Son of Yahweh, Elohim, or the Father, the Creator. And he was Adam of light, and Adam of paradise, who our ancestors are, which they were the ones, when Adam and Eve were created and they fell from paradise, that began the second world age. The second world age is the age of flesh, where we find ourselves incarnating into the bodies now. This flesh world age would last for 7,000 years, and then after that there would be a judgment. The third world age is an eternal age, and that would begin at the judgment seat, where every knee shall bow, every tongue confess. This is when the wheat and the tares are separated. But what people don't understand is that, and this goes a lot to explain about preexistence and also about incarnation, because what people don't understand is that we lived during the first world age. We had spiritual lives where we were part of and with the Father and the Son prior to even the war in heaven. And that when the rebellion took place, and Lucifer and 1/3 of the angels that were cast out of the heavens, all of that took place, we were also part of that. And part of our responsibility of incarnating into the flesh now is because of the consequences of our behaviors and our actions, the things that we did during our first world age lives. And that is part of our karma and part of what we are working out now while we in the flesh, and it's part of why we are determining our allegiances again while in the flesh. Because in the flesh, we find ourselves in a duality situation, in a binary soul situation where we have both the contrary spirit and the higher spirit. And that war in heaven happens within our souls, happens within our own hearts and in the temple of our bodies while we find ourselves in the flesh. And basically you have a good angel and a bad angel with you all moments of being, and we are in every day, every moment with all of our choices determining our eternal lives and where we'll be for salvation and what place and what part and, what judgment will come upon our spirit and our souls by our every thought and our every act and every behavior. And that has to do with every day and not just one day a week, that people go to church or, we're determining salvation with our every moment of every being.
Well, Zen, from reading your book, I got the impression that, and I could be wrong, I could be misunderstanding it, that you feel like these fallen gods or fallen angels, sons of gods or whatever that are mentioned in this fallen state, at least a portion of them are extraterrestrial rather than interdimensional, since you did mention the Nibiru planet?
Yeah, we're talking about the Anunnaki and the fallen angels and the sons of God that rebelled, and even Lucifer and his seraphim angels that were cast out of the heavens originally on the second day. These were the ones that were joined by the Watchers, the rebel angels that fell during the time of Yared. They were the ones that mated with the daughters of man and that created the hybrid race of giants. But yes, the archons that are mentioned in the Nag Hammadi codices, these are the ones, the interdimensional etheric light beings that got caught up in the flesh, that were the ones that during the time of Atlantis and Lemuria and all that, that got caught up in the flesh and got lost in the lust of the flesh, and they were the ones that were judged during the time of Lemuria and Atlantis and all of that. So yes, the archons, the Anunnaki, they also have part to play within the history of humanity and even the prehistory of humanity. And so, you know, that's why I wrote my book, to help people to understand the differences, what happened prior to, and even during the time of Atlantis, why it is that our ancestors were created, why it was that the Father decided to create modern Adam and Eve and to bring salvation and redemption through his own Son. All these things are unified in story and are played out in all the ancient traditions, the mythologies, and the different varying wisdom texts and books of the world found everywhere. And once you start to study and you can see the underlying truth of all things, then this is the strange esoteric tale that keeps presenting itself from all parts of the world.
Right. And, you know, a lot of people don't realize that the same tale is being retold with different wording, in other words. They think because it's reworded, it's a different story, and that's not always necessarily the case.
Right. Different definitions, different terms, different meanings, but basically the same underlying cast of characters.
Right. And, you know, a lot of reason for that is people need to understand that as people, I think, spread out along the face of the globe, well, it got to be a little bit harder and harder to understand each other. And, of course, the language has changed. And, well, naturally, as the language has changed, the retelling changed.
Well, not only that, but the people that are the ones that are connected to the rulers of darkness, the ones that are the elitists that are tied to these royal bloodlines that hold in their minds the divine right to rule, they have been at every turn of the way eradicating the truth and stripping it from the masses. The Council of Nicaea, the Catholic councils, even the councils that brought in the different canons, even the fact that you have a 66-book canon now, when in original the canon was an 80-book canon. I mean, they continue to eradicate and strip truth even now. They've got people so afraid to read the extra-biblical books or even to look into the pseudepigraphal books that they will argue and contend at every step of the way that you're basically worshiping the devil to do so. And so people will stay in the box, keep themselves in the box, and fight to keep everybody else in the same box. And all they're doing is keeping themselves from the truth that is out there. And so for those that are truth seekers like myself that don't want to be just contained and kept in the little box or in the little cage, but want to find as many pieces of the puzzle as possible in order to understand the whole picture, then the more that you can study, the more that you read, the more details and the more that you fill in the blanks, in my opinion.
Well, I think I would tend to agree with you on that, and I've actually, from the study I've done, made the same finding about the scriptures. There's I think it's called Timeline of the Bible. I would have to look that up too. I haven't been there in a while. That goes through exactly when these 14 books were in the Bible and when they were removed from the Bible. And they were actually in the King James 1611 Bible because I had my hands on King James 1611 Bible one time in a resale shop, and I saw them sitting in there. And then by the time you get to the King James we not the one we use now, but the one before it, because we got a revised version of that again, but you know the one I mean. These 14 books have already been removed, and I've been unable to find a good reason for their removal anywhere on the internet. And one of the best ones I think I found so far was there was a paper shortage back then.
Oh, is that right? I think there's a truth shortage.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Royce, in my opinion, again, it comes down to the fact that they were trying to hide the truth. They're trying to keep the masses from knowing who they are as the seed of the serpent, as the Pharisees, as those that were pointed out as, you know, those that were born of Abraham's seed, but seek to kill our Lord and seek to kill the King, that did in fact murder him. That these are the same church authorities that want to keep the truth from you. The same ones that wanted to kill our Lord when he came into the flesh are the same ones that are hiding the truth of who they are from you, and they're trying to keep people from knowing that there are these two different bloodlines on the planet, and that there's one dedicated, wholly dedicated, just like we're dedicated to serving the Father and the Son. They're dedicated to corruption and evil and to the New World Order, to the introduction of the global government, to depopulating the planet, even at the expense of their own children. I mean, so you have to know who the enemy is in order for you to understand what the war and what the battle is about.
Well, I would tend to agree with you, especially, like I said, what I've learned about the church over the years, and especially the Catholic Church. It was, in my opinion, by far the worst, and especially
they are a corrupt institution.
It was the one that originated everything. It was, well, in my basic opinion from my study, I thought if there was a Mystery Babylon, the mother of a harlot, mother of whores, that Mystery Babylon would be the Vatican or the Catholic Church or both, in other words. And
yeah,
the more I studied it, I began to
worship that Dogon, with the mitre, and if you know anything about Dagon or who Dogon is, he's connected to Oannes, and Oannes is connected to the hybrid fish god, and the hybrid fish god is connected to Quetzalcoatl and the plumed serpent, the feathered serpent.
Which all of that goes back to Enki.
Exactly, and that goes back to the feathered serpent who is the Nakash of Genesis chapter 3. All the connections are the same, and yes, Enki, or Ea, he is Oannes, he is Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan, he is the feathered serpent. He is the Nakash of Genesis chapter 3.
But I was going to say, but the more I looked into it, the more I began to realize that if this mother had harlots or whores, it would have to be all the churches that sprang from her.
It's all the pagan churches. It's all the idolatry.
Every thing from the Catholic down to every Protestant movement. And don't get me wrong, I think a lot of the Protestant movement, they are totally clueless that they are preaching false doctrine, and the fact that they can't agree doesn't tip them off, in other words.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the mother church, that's the one that knows what she's doing, in other words.
Oh, absolutely. They know exactly what they're doing. And they, at the top levels, they are Luciferians. They're just like the Freemasons, that until you reach the 33rd degree, you don't know that Lucifer is your God. And it's the same thing with the Catholic Church and a lot of the Protestant churches and a lot of the organized religions and churches of today. They are basically Babylonian churches that are still worshiping the fallen angels, the star gods, the hybrid demigods, the gods of Egypt, the gods of the Roman gods, the Greek gods. These are all the fallen pantheon of the fallen angels and their parents, their children. The priesthoods are the hybrid demigods that came about from the interdiction. The sons of God mating with the daughters of man, and so all of that is important to understand where we are now.
Well, I can tell you one thing. you look into it far enough, and you'll begin to find out, though, that the whole thing really started, this spiritual versus material, with two brothers, Enki and Enlil. And one of them is propagating a false church based on materialism, and the other one is trying to propagate philosophy based on spiritual principles.
Well, I find them to be both part of the fallen angel pantheon and to be part of the, because the way that I've come to know both Enlil and Enki is that Enlil is Zeus, or who came to, originally when Enki first came, he was the only god here, but then Enlil, his brother, came. He was given mission command. He took authority over here. And when he came, he drew straws. Him and his brother, Enlil and Enki, they drew straws with their father, Anu. Anu was given authority back over Nibiru, and Enlil became head over the mission command of Earth. And then Enki went down to South Africa to where the Abzu is, and he became known as Poseidon. But Enlil became the one known as Zeus. But basically, they were both part of the fallen angel pantheon in that they were both still taking and seducing the daughters of Ben, and that they were both part of that whole interdiction. And
well, I would agree with you in as much as the fact that they were both from the same planet, Nibiru, and they were both sons of Anu, and neither one of them was actually, God, the creator of all heaven and all earth.
Right.
And that much I knew to be a fact, and that's not what I meant when I went and what I did. What I'm making reference to is that one of them, although was not really God Almighty, was at least trying to teach spiritual philosophy principles, in other words.
Yeah, I will give you this. I will put that there was a war that occurred between the two bloodlines, and that the sons of the law and the sons of Belial, that these two divisions came into being. And this actually occurred even before the creation of modern humanity, modern Adam and Eve, that this goes back to even during the time of Atlantis in Lemuria, that this division occurred then. You can read about that division happening in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. It speaks about the brothers of darkness and the sons of Belial against the sons of light or the sons of law. This is also spoken about in the Dead Sea Scrolls, in the scroll of the wars of the sons of light and the sons of darkness. These two things are mentioned there.
And the battle's been going on.
That did occur.
Now, I was going to mention, because there's a lot of people out there that, they would disagree on 2 points that we're talking about that I know of, because I've been in debates and groups about this before. You can't study this and join groups and watch posts without, I know that can't be right, because I read, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But, one of those points that I've heard come up, and this has come specifically more from fundamental Christianity than it has any other sector, that there is no bloodline for Seth or for Abel or Seth or Cain. In other words, there's no serpent seed. Eve never slept with Samael.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people contend that and say that, but in my book, and the whole reason I wrote my book, Lucifer, Father of Cain, was because it keeps presenting itself to you in many various differing places, and that once you understand that there are two different bloodlines and two different lineages, that basically this becomes a skeleton key to unlock so many other aspects of the Word in the Bible. And basically, like I make mention, Cain is not in the lineage of Christ as laid out in Luke and Matthew. Both of them talk about Christ's lineage going all the way back to Adam, and Cain is excluded and left out. And there's a reason being. And also, if you study Matthew chapter 13, this is one of the most important parables. This is the Lord speaking to you directly. And this is after he sends the multitudes away. His apostles come up to him and ask him specifically to decipher for them the parable of the wheat and the tares. And he tells them directly that the children of the wicked one are the children of the devil, and that he has his own bloodline, his own seed line on his planet. And he also says that he is responsible for the children of Adam, the children of the wheat, and that the wheat and the tares will be separated, and that they are they only look like us. They have intermingled to such a degree that they look like us, they're with us. Daniel talks about the irie mire mix, the clay mixing with the irie mire, that miry iron. And that's basically speaking about the same thing. These two different bloodlines, and all through the Word you'll find these divisions. In the Old Testament, you can't escape it. The whole reason why Joshua is sent into the Promised Land and told to kill and slaughter every man, woman, and child is because they are going up against this hybrid bloodline, this giant lineage bloodline that has 6 fingers, 6 toes, double sets of teeth. They worship their fallen angel parents. They do blood sacrifice. They offer up their own children to their Moloch gods, their idol gods, or Dagon, whoever it is that represents the fallen angels, the pagan gods at that time. Unless you understand, this is also why the flood was brought in, why Noah was spared, why Joshua was told to eradicate, the hybrid bloodline from the Promised Land. All these things only make sense and only come to clarity when you have this discernment. And I'm not asking anybody to believe me. Study it for yourself and take it to the Lord and ask Him to reveal it for you, because He will. He will.
In fact, there's a place in there that in the New Testament, again, I don't always remember where I see things, but believe you me, I'm good about remembering what I see and what I read. But it said that, and this is talking about God, has created all men to live upon the face of the earth of one blood. And that's not a word-for-word quote. But here's the trick. If he created men of one blood, and if you go by the Bible as infallible the way the fundamentalists do, that would mean Adam and Eve being the first creation would have to be one blood, unless somebody else was there that's not mentioned in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
That means that there was one blood, and we now have O positive, O negative, AB positive, A positive, B positive. I mean, all kinds of different bloodlines. Then these other ones had to come from somewhere. Right. There had to be another seed line. And even if there was extraterrestrials here before the time of Adam, if they created Adam and Eve as the first set, then their particular race would have been a pure bloodline until polluted later. So it still goes back to blood had to be polluted somewhere down the line, and you can go one step further with this scientifically, that O negative blood cannot receive blood transfusions from any of the other bloods, as though perhaps it was the outside influence, because it can be injected into positive, but the positive can't be injected into it.
I would also say real quick, Royce, because I know we're running out of time, that it says that Eve is the mother of all living, but nowhere does it say that Adam was the father of all living, and that's because he was not the father of Cain's line. He was only the father of Seth's line, and the reason Seth came about was because Abel was murdered and killed by his brother, and he would have been the originator of Seth's line or Adam's line, but he was murdered. And that was also why Cain was the first murderer, liar, and deceiver, is because he was not of Adam's nature. He was of the devil, of Lucifer, of Satan, who was considered the first murderer, liar, and deceiver.
Right. And what I was going to mention, because you're right, we're running out of time pretty quick here, is, well, once again, an hour is never enough to cover this topic.
Right.
Never has been. I was going to say, since I didn't get a chance to finish your book due to a website crash, why don't you let me get past the new year and have a chance to finish reading your book, and then invite you back to
that would be great.
Take back up where we're leaving off at now, and I'll have even more of what you put in there for us to talk about, because I think this is a very interesting conversation, and I'm pretty sure I got some listeners that's going to want to hear more on it.
Oh, and I think that once you have time to really delve into the deeper aspects of the book, you're going to have a lot of what would be more advanced questions, and I certainly welcome that. And I definitely think your listeners would be interested in the deeper aspects of where we could go with our conversation and our dialogue. So,
well, yeah,
absolutely.
Because there's a lot of things that has to be covered. Real quick, like you people out there, y'all want to get his book. It's titled The Sons of God. You can get it at Amazon. You can get it right here when you listen to the show in the archive. I think you got a link to it on your site too, don't you?
Yeah, it's on the fallenangels.tv website. The official release date will be the 29th of January, but it is available from Tate Publishing. That's where the book is released right now. But it will be available on all the different web portals and even in the bookstores after the 29th of January.
Cool. That'd be a good time to have you come back after people had a chance to look at it.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Anytime, Russ, you just let me know.
I'd also like to recommend to everybody, if y'all get a chance, to look up The Gods of Eden by William Bromley. And he covers a lot of the similar material and offers a lot of confirmation. And he followed it through all some of the wars that they got, or actually a huge chunk of it, and many look like manufactured plagues and things of this nature that you might be interested in checking out. Are you familiar with The Gods of Eden by William Bromley by any chance then?
I have not read that book, but his research I have come across. In fact, he did say that some of the plagues were manufactured by the Anunnaki or the ancient aliens, and so that was an aspect of his research that is interesting to me, and that I do want to do further research on. But no, I haven't read a whole lot of opinions from other people or books by other people. I've just basically spent most of my time reading the scriptures and the available scriptures themselves, and doing comparative analysis in that way.
I ain't gonna kid you. You read the Bible more than any man or I don't mean Bible, I mean scripture, period. I mean, all scripture, even more than I do. And until I met you, I didn't think I'd meet anybody else who did that.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting aspects of my work, is that I do and I have read a lot that most people have never heard about.
All righty. Well, I'll tell you what, we got 2 minutes till 9. I know we started like 2 minutes late, but we'll just go ahead and call this a wrap for now. And we got each other's information. Why don't we stay in touch in the meantime, and I'll definitely get you set up on another date. And would you like to do a Saturday the next time?
Yeah, we can do whatever works for you. Just let me know, and whatever's good for you. And I'm open for longer time slot, even whatever works for you. It works for me, and we'll make it happen. And I appreciate you, Russ.
That's why I said Saturday. It's easier to do 2 hours on Saturday than it is a weeknight when I got to get up early and get my son off to school.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do that. Let's shoot for 2 hours on Saturday then.
All righty. Well, until then, you have a nice weekend and you enjoy what's left of the holidays. And I want to thank everybody else out there for listening. Couldn't have a show without you. You newcomers, I hope to see you here more often. Hope you enjoyed the show. And anybody listening in archives anywhere, I hope to see you guys coming in and joining the chat with the rest of the people in here. And in the meantime, That's it, folks, or beep, 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 beep. That's all, folks. You have a good night and talk to you later.
God bless. Good
God
night.
bless you. Wow.